So let's talk about Mr. Robert Owens. He's a 25-year-old patient. He's presenting to you with a 2-week history of blood in his stool. It started initially with loose stools, then this has progressed over time to include frank blood and a bit of mucus as well. He says he has some bowel urgency, but without frank incontinence, and he's been without any kind of abdominal cramps. He also has some vague systemic symptoms. He feels fatigued. He feels like maybe he has some joints aching. He can't really pinpoint one or two. It's just kind of all over. He's been without fevers and chills. He's not traveled any place exotic. He's not eating any new foods at all. Not a smoker, and doesn't really mention any other noteworthy medical history. Not really sure so much about his family history. He thinks maybe his dad maybe had some kind of a bowel problem, but doesn't know much more than that, and says his mom's healthy. So, we were talking a little bit earlier. I feel like a lot of, at least in primary care specifically, we see a lot of presentations of sort of a constellation of vague gastrointestinal symptoms. So for this type of case, what's your initial approach?
Sure. So there are a few sort of buzzwords in your case that raise my suspicion for inflammatory bowel disease. The guy's healthy otherwise, and he's young. So there are not a lot of things that can cause this sort of constellation of symptoms in a young 25-year-old kid. The time course is the one thing that sort of potentially turns me off of IBD, because we think of IBD as a chronic disease. Now, obviously, it's got to start sometime. Right. So, this guy lucked out. We got a cancellation because I never see someone after 2 weeks of symptoms. But if this case was 6 months of symptoms, I mean, this would be IBD unless proven otherwise. The other sort of major category of diseases I would think about in someone like this is an infectious etiology. A few weeks of diarrhea with blood. You're thinking about one of the sort of invasive pathogens, E. coli, Campylobacter, et cetera.